Hello, everybody, and welcome back to my channel. My name is AJ Edwards, and this is Mr. E's Classroom. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest, an old friend of mine from the Marine Corps who has just recently, in April of 2021, published his first book called Barbaric Heart. Ladies and gentlemen, I am joined today with Staff Sergeant Michael Baldridge. So, Mike, thank you for joining. How you doing, brother?
Doing good. Just plugging away. Things change, things stay the same. But it was nice to complete the book. It was kind of a very long process and a very cathartic experience writing it too. So that was very helpful.
Yeah, right on, man. Yeah, and I can't wait to talk to you about your book. But I think the first thing I got to do, this is kind of my tradition, is I got to ask, what are you reading now?
I'm kind of all over the place. I'm actually reading something from another self-published author. And she writes a lot about PTSD and some of the problems that may occur with combat veterans once they come home. Not so much, the wild tales from overseas and so forth, but the struggles once they're back. So I've kind of been delving into that category because it does pertain to me a little bit, and certainly some people that I've served with. So.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, I wish I could have a mature, responsible response like yours. So me personally, I'm doing my summer reading challenge. If any of you watched a previous video of mine, I created the summer challenge. Currently, I'm stuck in the longest book of my choice, which is Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. So I'm getting really nostalgic, man. Dude, I'm going back to being like 14, 13 years old, wanting to be in the Triwizard Tournament, but it's great. And actually, so Mike, your book, believe it or not, replaced one of my books for my summer reading challenge. For the book about someone's life, I had originally wanted to read Come Back, but when I found out about your book and when I heard that you had ventured into publishing, I had to put it onto my list. So
Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you, man. I appreciate your time. So the first question I want to ask, coming from being, well, first, give us a bit of information about your background. Tell us where you were compared to where you are now.
Right now, I work as a DoD civilian, so a GS employee, basically working still for the government, Marine Corps specifically, but under the guise of obviously being a civilian now. And I get an opportunity to still help Marines in active duty service and some of the reserves as well with training venues that simulate peer competitor competitions, combat in a simulated digital environment. So we do a lot of research into our current pacing threats, and then bring that flavor into the exercises. Because as you know, we've spent 15, 20 plus years in CENTCOM fighting the war on terrorism. So trying to get back to that idea of having to deal with some of the pure threats that are out there. And it's pretty enjoyable. I do like it. I live out here in Joshua Tree, California. So there's some pluses there, some benefits. So that's a little warm for your viewers that haven't been out here. I think we hit about 122 lately the other day, but yeah, it's good. It's going well,
man. Yeah, I have fond and not so fond memories. I actually turned 20 in 29 Palms. We did a mortar shoot. I was all excited because I turned 18 in boot camp, 19 in Iraq, and I was all excited. My birthday was in February. I'm going to turn 20 years old, be able to celebrate it in California at Pendleton. Next thing you know, I think it was Staff Sergeant Kunith. He came and told us, "Hey, we're doing a mortar shoot out at 29," and yeah, so I got to go out there on my birthday, and it's pouring down rain. We're at Camp Wilson, and it's just yeah. So that officially made it so that I had 0 birthdays in the Marine Corps because I ended up turning 21 in Afghanistan, and I turned 22 as a civilian. So yeah, I spent some good days out there in your neck of the woods. So Mike, before we get into your book, tell us a bit about your Marine Corps career. So I know we served together, but tell everyone kind of your story.
Yeah, so I was a little different than some in my timing for joining the Marine Corps. A little bit later in my life, I had already gone to college and gotten a bachelor's degree in graphic design, which I really wasn't using, but only used years later to design tattoos and T-shirts for my friends in the military. But I was working in management, a private security company management. Money was good, but it wasn't fulfilling in any way. So, 27-year-old me decided, well, I know what I'll do. I'll join the Marine Corps. So I looked into, officer candidate school and all that kind of stuff because I had already got my degree. And there was a lot of red tape. So I decided, I'll just enlist and I'll sort all that stuff out later. If I still want to be an officer, I'll go to, OCS, TBS, all that guys. So came in infantry, just like yourself, and was an 0352 anti-tank infantryman. And it was good. I enjoyed it. I did 2 years with the 2-1. We did that deployment together to Iraq. And it was good, but I still wanted more. I still wasn't getting exactly what I wanted out of the military. Still had questions about myself. And quite frankly, how would I really do in serious heavy combat? Because that deployment, there honestly wasn't a whole lot. And then shortly after, like we spoke earlier, our first sergeant at the time, First Sergeant Ferguson, who I still keep in touch with, great guy.
Yeah, John Ferguson, great guy.
Yeah, no, he's awesome. He rounded up a few of us and sent us out to the road show. So we sat there and started getting the brief. Yeah, as you pointed out earlier, I was kind of nodding my head. All right, yeah. About 5-10 minutes in, I decided it was what I wanted to do. So
yeah. I had mentioned to Mike earlier when we were talking before the interview. I distinctly remember. So we went down to Las Pulgas, and I remember sitting in that classroom, and Mike was like, I think you were next to me. You were pretty close, and I remember kind of out of the corner of my eye, I was looking, and I'm like, because I think you were the only guy from 2-1 that was there, so you were like the only friendly face in a room full of strangers. So I was kind of looking over at Mike. I'm like, okay, what's Baldridge doing right now? And I just remember this grin, and I'm like, this guy's gonna do it. I kind of checked out when I saw the scuba diving package, and I'm like, you know what? No, thank you. Swim qual was fun enough, but I'm not going to do that. And then there's Baldridge. I'm like, this guy's here we go.
Here we go is right. I still have nightmares about some of the days in the swim training tank, though. We're lying. But yeah, so long story short, assessment selection got selected, went to ITC, individual training course, where Marines are trained to become critical skills operators. And then once you complete that course, it is roughly a 9-month course with a little bit of language tacked onto the end of it. Then you'll go to a team, whichever team you're going to be, whichever company and battalion. So it's either 1st, 2nd, or 3rd Raider Battalion. It used to be 2nd and 3rd were on the East Coast, and 1st was out on the West Coast, but now they're moving 1st out there as well. So it's all going to be back there at Stones Bay. And it was good. I love team life. It's very hard, very arduous, a lot of training, gone a lot of the time. So relationships can be difficult, but you're working with other men that would feel as though they failed if they weren't giving their team 100% of themselves every day. And, there's a saying that we had that every day is selection. So you show up and give everything you got every day. And that was really cool to work in that kind of an environment.
It's interesting, the different mindsets. And there's a fear of failure everywhere you go. But I definitely noticed with raiders and with operators, there's a huge, like you see it. I mean, I think that's the reason why it's so popular on like TV and movies. If you like, movies and TV shows like SEAL teams and Rangers and, Raiders will eventually get our moment in the sun. But you see, there's a reason that it's like not glorified, but like it's looked up to. When people hear that you're a Raider or you're a SEAL or you're a Green Beret, there's that aura of like, this guy's got the whole package. And yeah, that's great. So in April of this year, you published your first book. It's called Barbaric Hearts. I'll have a picture here on the screen for everyone to look at. I'll tell you, I read that book in 2 days. I stopped what I was doing. I cracked the spine, and next thing I know, it's like 3 a.m, and I'm dropping my Kindle on my face because I'm trying to get through. I'm trying to get through. But yeah, it was a good one, man. So, what inspired you to write a book of all things?
Well, it was a number of different things. Part of it was as I get further and further away in time from the events the book is based on, I didn't want to lose accountability, and I didn't want my memory to fade as to all of the events that went on. So part of it is just a marker of time to have those events down on something permanent, like a published book, to go back on, or to show my children, or all of the rest of my teammates, or men and women from the community, or anyone at all, really, just to pick it up and understand what it was that that took place in that time frame. And also, there's parts of the book that outline the passing of some very good friends and brothers. We lost 3 team members on that deployment, which was a very difficult experience, because we weren't able to process that grief in the moment, because we were still very much in Indian country fighting for our lives. So it had to be kind of stuffed in the rucksack for later. And unfortunately, that methodology of dealing with that type of grief persisted, long after there was time to deal with it. So another big part of me writing the book was a cathartic experience, to go back to those moments, to feel those senses and those feelings again, and get it down on paper and kind of get it out. And I've never done any professional writing before the book. I just kind of stumbled through it and learned as I went. But I would recommend it to anyone, regardless of age or experience. If a knuckle dragger like me can figure it out, you can certainly figure it out. And just write what you feel. Write what you feel, and it doesn't have to be chronologically correct. It doesn't all have to make sense on the one go. But eventually, I got to a point where I had enough pockets of writing here and there that I was able to sift through and start to see some of the connective tissue. Some of it started to make sense with other parts that made sense. Some of it didn't, so I moved those out. And then it kind of started coming together for me that way.
So how long would you say the whole process took?
Once I started writing, it took me about, I'd say, 2.5 years. And I really took my time with it. I kind of needed to, for emotional and psychological reasons. But just getting to a place where I could write about it, that was about a 7-year process. And in retrospect, I don't know if it would have been better if I would have wrote it sooner, but I certainly felt better after having written it. So, there's that. Yeah.
So with a book like Barbaric Heart, so when I did my master's in English, because everyone needs a master's in English. When I did my master's in reading books and talking about it, my thesis was about the shift in purpose between like World War II memoirs and post-Vietnam memoirs, and the idea of the book, pre or post World War II, the John Bassilones, the Robert Leckie, the Eugene Sledge, it was more, there was the element of like remembering the fallen, but it was more focusing on like the honorable sacrifice of heroes and the victory of good versus evil. But then with post-Vietnam, you notice a transition, like even looking at like the things they carried by Tim O'Brien, or Shadow of the Sword by Jeremiah Workman. There's a shift between, writing as a means of celebrating and writing as like a means of healing, coping, and understanding, and really understanding why. But I also notice there's a shift between the audience. And I think that the availability of things like YouTube and the televising of the Vietnam War really changed it, where Joe Schmo with a computer can literally be next to you in a firefight, or as close to being next to you in a firefight through a flunker's video on YouTube. But I noticed that there was an apparent shift in the audience, where the World War II narratives were more for like the people, like the families back home, to know what their sons had done. But there seemed to be a change with the post-Vietnam audience, where it's more like this was written not for little Jimmy the civilian, but for Sergeant Smith, the other broken veteran, or the other not broken veteran. I don't think we're broken. We just have some cracks. So who would you say was your really intended audience, and is there an intended audience?
Yeah, first and foremost, it's to the families of my brothers that I lost in combat, so they will have as honest and accurate an account that I can give of what happened and how valiantly and bravely they fought and died. Each one of them, and it's detailed thoroughly in the book, died a warrior's death, weapon in hand. And it's one of the highest honors that any one of us could hope for in taking on that kind of an endeavor, that type of lifestyle, that type of work. So firstly, it was for the families. And then secondly, like you just mentioned, to all the rest of us, whether you were in combat or not in combat, whatever your MOS was, if you served in the military, you have some type of understanding of some of these struggles and difficulties that can occur, years and years after the actual events. So I think those two were the primary audiences. And then also, to everyone else, so that one day my daughters will know what their father did, before they were born. And so people just know the sacrifices and the hardships that went into that particular conflict.
Yeah, and I think it's a great, it's a great medium, because when you look at like literature versus, digital files and stuff like that, like there's like a timelessness of literature. The written word has been around for quite a while, and it'll be around for a lot longer than you and I are. But I remember, there are, video files that can't open now because technology has changed. But I can always, the pages might be yellow and they might smell like an old library, but 100 years down the line, my daughter's kids can read about their grandpa's friend and get an understanding, not only through you, but yeah, like you said, the shared experience. Because there's a lot of people, and I'm kind of jumping ahead more to like the mental health aspect, because I think you definitely address that really well in your book and in the way you articulate it now. A lot of people always imagine that, mental health, you have to go through like the extremes of combat to really come back changed. And one thing that I remember saying, and I had a friend of mine who, never saw combat, went to Afghanistan, stayed, I think, in like Bastion or Dwyer, stayed in the rear, not with us, a different deployment, different time. But, they left the wire a few times, but they came back and they were like, hey, something's different, something's wrong, but I shouldn't feel this way because I didn't, he doesn't have a combat action ribbon or anything like that. And I was like, well, it's not the idea of experiencing, the rounds coming at you and all that, but it's like the idea of like, you put any human being in a situation in which, the threat is literally everywhere. Every step you take, you never know that one moment you might be taking incoming. It has that impact on people, and it can affect us in many different ways. And that's one of the things that really stood out to me with your book. One of the things that I really appreciated, though, when I read your book was, you were very open about, the invisible wounds that are suffered by people who go through situations similar to that. And I appreciate also that you had, you really highlight not just the effects of the experience, but also kind of like the resistance, like the mentality that we have, whether it's for better or for worse, of we really need to put things to the side because we have a mission to accomplish. And that's one thing that I think people don't realize when they're trying to understand why veterans come home the way we come home. When you come home, we don't want to stick around Camp Pendleton, Camp Lejeune, or wherever. We don't want to be stuck on base when we just came home from a 7-month pump. We want to go out and be with our families and all that. So the decompression time is delayed there. Then when we're with our families, we don't want to really deal with the issues because now we're surrounded by something beautiful. So then we put it to the side again. Then we get back with our boys, but we don't want to appear weak because we got to lead our men and we got to continue to carry on with the next mission because there's always a next mission. So we put it to the side then. And it isn't until it's really compounded that it is being released. And in many different ways, it's being released for better or for worse. I love that you were willing to be really open about your experience. And, I appreciate just seeing the effects that it has on veterans. I really appreciate you putting that in your book because I really think it's going to help the people who don't understand recognize, we have 5 minutes before you got to carry on. Something bad happens, dwell on it for 5 minutes, but we're still in the middle of, we're on a patrol. Dust off is gone. Let's go. Let's push.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And those opportunities or lack thereof opportunities to deal with some of those, those feelings, those frustrations, and some of the, in a lot of cases, in my case, guilt, frankly, survivor's guilt that comes with it. It can manifest and come to the surface in very unhealthy ways. And it may not happen quickly, but over time, if those types of severe feelings are repressed, from my own experience, I'll tell you, it can bubble over in ways that you don't want it to. And you're absolutely right. Also, in that it's very much a balancing act, because it is frankly part of the job you signed up to do, and mission has to come first. So you push it down so you can complete your mission, whatever that may be. But I would highly recommend anybody that's still dealing with it, get it sorted, man. Find somebody to talk to, write like I did. You're more than welcome to copy my exact path. I don't have a patent on any of that. And feel free to reach out to people. I mean, you can reach out to me and send me an email. Yeah, but get it dealt with, address it. I would say, don't let that kind of stuff.
Yeah. One thing that I really loved and I thought was really beautiful, and I really think, it exposes like the true heart of a warrior. A samurai will fight, they will kill, but then they will grow their cherry blossoms and tend to their bonsai trees. So you had mentioned when you were in Afghanistan, and correct me if I make any mistakes, but when you were in Afghanistan, when you were separated from your original team and you went up north,
Yep.
you started exploring art again. And I know, thank you for mentioning that you had a degree in graphic design. For some reason, I thought you were business. I don't know. You always seem very put together, like a businessman, with the great beard and the sleeves of tattoos, of course. But you mentioned how you use art. So tell us a bit about using art as like your system.
Yeah, it was the first kind of scratchings at dealing with some of the stuff that I was processing based on my experiences. So, to give you a quick synopsis of what happened that evening, 3 of my teammates were killed in a green on blue attack when our compound was infiltrated and attacked. And I was seconds away from the incident after it happened. So there was a lot of like second guessing, like if only I was doing this, or if I was doing that, or if I had stayed in the room, I could have at least fought with them. And my mind would just go and go and go with that. And I wasn't getting a lot of sleep. So I would stay up and just start sketching and working in graphite and charcoal and doing some drawings. And I found that, it was more therapeutic than I gave it credit for at the time, because I didn't understand what a healing process was. But it quieted my mind and it allowed me to sleep. And it just kind of took my repetition of thought that I think you can get into at times when you're struggling with things, and it stopped the cycle. It said, all right, that's going to stop now. You just focus on this, or let your conscious mind go and your subconscious can work through this. And that helped me out a lot later, years after that. When I got out, I always knew I wanted to come back to it and do large pieces again. But because I had kind of started a little bit and I dabbled back during that time in Afghanistan, it wasn't so formed. So when I did come back to it on a regular basis, it was even more beneficial. And then I really kind of started to do some research and understand why it was beneficial.
That's amazing. And I think it's a really important message for our audience. With my channel, obviously this is about like, books and learning and reading, but I love that you also mentioned like the idea of art, because I think that's something that in schools is being slowly but surely being, dwindled away until it's becoming nothing. But it's amazing that you found something that you have passion about, and it was something that you use as healing. And I think this is an important message for teachers right now with COVID and with the way the world is, like we need to find our own outlets. And like for me, that's powerlifting. I do competitions, I pick up heavy crap, I put it down. For students, if you love art, like, find your release and find your healthy release. And who knows, like, I mean, like you, Mike, it turned into something, you produced a book, you're producing art, and it's pushing you forward into a really exciting future. So
I agree with you 100%. It doesn't have to be a lockstep or a formulaic approach to, mental health or healing. I think everybody's a little different. So the approach naturally would have to be a little different too, to tailor to that specific person's needs, emotions, and the way they experience the world. So whether it's art, whether it's music, lifting, boxing, writing, whatever you do, find the things that kind of put you in that state of mind, that flow state where you can just settle some of those feelings. Once you kind of get your own program together, stick with that. It'll be helpful.
With the title Barbaric Hearts, obviously people hear the idea of barbarism and they hear the idea of barbarian, and there's many different impressions that come to mind. Obviously, I think you and I, coming from a similar culture and community, especially with our backgrounds, for me, I interpret it one way, but what would you say is the meaning behind Barbaric Heart?
Yeah, the reason I went with that title was because when I was feeling my best as a warrior, before my friends had died, and we were really taking care of business in the Helmand River Valley. We had a lot of successes and reduced a lot of high value targets, and increased our operational zone and breadth pretty significantly. And that really is kind of the life you lead as a barbarian. You're out there in Indian country, for lack of a better term, and you don't have a lot of support. You can get air support, but you're really there with your team and your partner nation force, whoever else you happen to be there with, some odds and ends, ANA, special forces, or whomever. But it's up to you, and you have to be, I found, that strong-willed, no hesitating, highly trained and lethal human being. You have to be able to flip that switch on, and you have to be comfortable with it. You also have to be able to switch it off and dial it back when things like morality come into play, and they always seem to in combat situations. So you walk a fine line. And then after I had separated from the Marine Corps, I went through a period of just not feeling like that man that I was anymore. I was dealing with loss. I was dealing with survivor's guilt. And it really took a chunk out of me. And I just knew my heart wasn't as full as it used to be. I wasn't a full-hearted warrior. I wasn't a full-hearted barbarian the way I used to be in the wild. And so the part of the book that's more of a process for me and just meant to be shared as events that happen, was to get back to that in the best way that I could figure out how, through reading, a lot of research. Everything from chaos theory to Sun Tzu to Hinduism, Taoism, New Age mathematic theories. And the thing that kind of started to come to me was there's a lot of connective tissue with all of that stuff. Not that one is more advanced or better or older, but you can start to see a lot of similarities, a lot of patterns start to emerge. And then little by little, I was able to, through writing and reading and researching and art, like we talked about, fitness, kind of pull myself back to that man, that confidence that I used to have, and that I don't want to say savagery, but that ability to flip that switch if I ever have to again. Not that I look for opportunities, but there's a certain peace and there's a certain strength and confidence that just comes with knowing you have a barbaric heart.
Let's talk a bit about becoming the barbarian that you became. A lot of people see, on the advertisements for the Marine Corps, the Navy, they never see, police calling the smoke pit or field daying your house, your barracks room on a Thursday, trying to get libo for the weekend. They see the hardcore freaking driving and shooting and all the cool things to do. So let me ask you, first off, what was the biggest challenge you faced in becoming a Marsoc raider? What was the training like? This is your chance to help improve the community by really appealing to the younger audience and making them want to go and make things go boom.
Yeah, it's, first off, I'll say, yeah, the grass is greener. It really is. If you're interested in special operations, seriously, I would take the time and research it and find out what it really is and what it really isn't. So you're not taken aback once you start your training for it. But it is a good lifestyle. Some things I'll throw out right up front. that may not be considered by some people that kind of take the endeavor is you're not going to have a lot of time. You are going to be, once you're in a team, traveling a lot, training a lot, going to schools, going to different trainings around the country, around the world in some cases, and then you're going to deploy. You could be gone for 7 months, you could be gone for 2 months, whatever the mission is, whether you're doing, a JSET or whatever. So you're not going to have a lot of time. It's going to be physically demanding. I'm now 42 years old, and I feel like I've been in a car accident every time I wake up in the morning. It takes a toll. It takes a toll on the body. So fitness before, during, and after is like paramount, just to keep everything together. And then finally, the thing that I would not caution, but just get out there as an honest truth is, you are going to be putting yourself in some very, very dangerous, high risk situations. And you run the risk of being dismembered, losing arms and limbs, losing your mind, watching your friends die, or dying yourself. It's just a reality of the job. I'm not saying it to scare anybody or to pump myself up. It's just a reality. So that being said, if it's something you want to do, I would highly recommend it. If it is something you want to do, it's a great life. Start training, start swimming. I think one of the toughest things for me was the water, was the aquatics. I grew up surfing and swimming in the ocean, but it's just a whole nother level. Once you get in there and you start doing some of the ground proofing, the underwater crossovers, and you're playing all the little games that get played in the swim training tank. Dive school was another one that was pretty challenging. Great school, fun school, but definitely challenging. And then, just the mental toughness you have to have for a 9-month training course where, I don't want to say attrition's the mission, because it's not, but you will see, your numbers as a class just start to dwindle and dwindle and dwindle as you go through it, because people just decide they've had enough. So think long and hard about it, do research, be sure of what you're getting into before you get into it. And then if it is what you want, you decide, stay decided, just do it. Shortest way out is through. But yeah, some of the things you get to do, the shooting packages, the explosives packages, breaching, different things I can't even talk about at this level because of the classifications involved, but there are some really neat things you'll be exposed to. And you will definitely get a little more out of life, in my opinion. I feel like I did.
So what was your favorite package that you can talk about?
Yeah, I think for me, it was a school called Methods of Entry. It's an explosive breaching school. And, they teach you all the explosive and explosive weights, and using the least amount of explosives to enter a compound, or to reduce a wall, or to gain access to whatever. We got to work on cutting torches, cutting saws and cutting torches, and using like a thermobaric lance to cut through steel. It's really cool, really fun. And then all the mechanical breaching too, with the Halligans and just, old Semper Fi strength, brute force. But it was fun. It was a lot of fun. That one, dive school, was great. All of the shooting packages, the direct action packages, are just phenomenal. You're shooting just thousands and thousands of rounds a day. Cost you a fortune to do that now on your own. But I think those are probably my top 3 that I enjoyed.
See, proof there, because you were almost 30 years old or 30 years old going through school, you never lose that boyish desire to just blow things up.
Absolutely not. There's nothing like it. There's nothing like it.
Hey, that's why I love being a mortarman, man. I loved when we would do especially nighttime, fire for effects, or doing shake and bake missions. Oh man, you never outgrow that. I'm 31 years old, and if I had an opportunity right now to drop some Willie P and some HE and just
absolutely,
yeah, any day, call me, right? Hey, thank you so much for your time. Just really quick though, what's next for you?
Well, as far as writing goes, I've kind of discovered it as a late life love. So I've started working on another project. It's called The Violence Equation. and it kind of takes some of the concepts that I exposed through my own experiences in Barbaric Heart and delves into historical accounts to try and understand them more succinctly than just one man's experience, and then take those historical accounts and put them into a couple of different theories that I have, and they could be dead wrong. I don't know, but it's a lot of fun to do the research and to kind of take those things and put them together. So that's really what I'm working on now, and yeah, that's about it, man.
Right on. So where can people find a copy of Barbaric Heart?
You can get it on Amazon. You can get it on Barnes and Noble website. You can download a Kindle version, or I believe Barnes and Nobles is the Nook. You can get it for that as well. You can go to my website, that'll take you there. There's a little bit of information about the violence equation, my next project, on the website. If you're interested, you can check that out. And some deployment photos and some other things like that that are kind of fun to see. Yeah, but thank you for having me, man. I'm glad you read the book. I'm glad you enjoyed it. It's great to see you again. It's been too long.
Yeah, no, it's been people, I don't think people because so I just did a video about enlisting in the military, but I think one thing I forgot to talk to people about is just like that bonds of brotherhood. Like, so for anyone who's watching, I probably haven't seen Mike for maybe 12 years. I think, like, honestly, I think the last time I really saw you, maybe around the barracks from time to time after we did the brief at Polgus, but I think like the last time I saw you was in that classroom in Polgus before you chose to go and become an operator. And, you know, it's been 12 years, but it's been more like a week, you know. I mean, it's a really great connection that you have. But yeah, so again, everyone, I have I'll include links in the description for all of Mike's books. Please, everyone, check it out. I read it in 2 days. It's a really great book. It's a really good, if you're a veteran, it's a great insight to finding somebody who thinks, feels, and believes in similar things as you. If you're family members of a veteran, you know, it's a great way to understand those that you care about and better connect with them and understand their experience. It's also a really awesome gift idea. We have Father's Day coming up. Actually, by the time I put this out, it might be past that. Really good Father's Day gift. But it's great. So I'm going to put all the links in the description below. But thank you, everyone, for tuning in for this episode. I know it's a little bit longer than what I normally do, but thank you all for joining. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe, like, share, comments, do all that good stuff. And yeah, so that was Staff Sergeant Michael Baldridge talking about his book, Barbaric Hearts. And thank you very much for joining. And as always, everyone, make it a great day.